Hello and welcome. My name is Steve Offroth, and I'm the Health and Fitness Director for the City of Eugene. And I'm here to talk to you very briefly today about the automatic external defibrillators, otherwise known as the AED. So this is a safety check for the defibrillators, and these need to be done monthly. So I know that sometimes that's tedious, but these devices need to be checked to make sure that the pads are within the expiration date as well as the batteries, and to make sure that the defibrillator itself is working. Now we have two kinds of defibrillators around the city. The earlier model, called the FR2, we purchased a number of years ago, and there are a few of those around the city. And the vast majority of the ones that we've purchased lately are called the on-site defibrillator. And so there's a couple of different things about these two. They work exactly the same once the pads are connected, but there's a couple of different things which I will demonstrate later on how to do that on Recessa Annie. So first we need to do a safety check. And so this will only take about 2 minutes, and then you'll need to initial the card that everything is working. So the first thing we can do is we can look at this little screen on the top right of both these machines, and this is a blinking X on this one, on the FR2, and the on-site defibrillator, it's a blinking green dash. And so that's the first thing you could check to make sure that everything is working in the battery. And if these are not working, the batteries are not working properly, there'll be a chirp coming from the machine. So hopefully we'll never get to that point where we're hearing a chirping before we replace the batteries and replace the pads. The pads on these devices, they have a gel material on the pads that help with sticking to the skin, as well as conducting the amperage through the heart to actually stop the fibrillation from happening and allow the heart to restart. So over time, this gel on those pads will dry out. And so we want to make sure that all of our equipment in the AED is up to date and that nothing is out of date. So if the pads are out of date or the battery's out of date, they need to be replaced as soon as possible, and thus the monthly check will ensure that those pads and the batteries are up to date. And so if you need to order supplies, just please call me. My number is on the bottom of the screen, or you can email me, and my email address is there as well. So they're very inexpensive to replace the pads and replace the batteries, especially when compared to saving a life. And we just want to make sure, as I said previously, that everything is up to date. So let's look at the old FR2 first. And so what we're going to do is we're going to unzip it. We're going to open it up, and so looking at the FR2, it's got a green button off on, and so we want to press that button.
Apply pads to patient's bare chest.
And you can hear the voice coming on, so that means that everything is working properly, so then you're going to hold it down for a second or two just to make sure that it's off. So the pads are in a sealed envelope here, and they fit right underneath the cover, as well as there's a space for the extra battery. And I just checked this one this morning, and the battery was out of date, so I pulled it out and put the current battery, the new battery in that is within the date, the proper date. And so there would be an extra battery here as well. So you check the pads to make sure that the date is correct. We would check the battery to make sure the date is correct. On this model, if you need to replace the battery, it's on the top, and then you can press the yellow handle on the back and then pull it out. And to look on the day, this one is good until March of 2017. So this one is good for a while longer. And so typically the batteries are good for, now it's going to come back on, I'm going to turn it back off. Oh, it just blinked on. So the batteries are good for anywhere from 4 to 6 years. The pads are good from anywhere from about 2 years to maybe 2.5 years. So we need to make sure that these are all checked properly and are ready to go. So once you turn the machine on, make sure it works. You check the pads for their date, you check the battery for the date, and then you would close it back up. And then on all of our devices, we have what's called a fast response kit, and that's hanging off the side of the defibrillator. And this one, we have a pocket mask in here, which we're no longer teaching breathing with our CPR classes. So if you've not been through a version of the CPR class, I would recommend that, because we do hands-only CPR. And there's a lot of research out there demonstrating why that's very important. And in this packet, there's a razor, there's an absorbent pad, and I've noticed that some of the fast response kit doesn't have any kind of absorbent pad. So it'd be good to get some kind of absorbent material in there. And this one also has a micro shield, which we're not using anymore. It also has a couple pair of gloves. And so that's one thing, if you can, the person does the monthly check to make sure these gloves are okay. And then this one has a pair of scissors. So if we have to cut off clothing or cut material away from the person, we have one of these pairs of scissors that will do that with no problem. So you just real briefly check those things to make sure they're all there. And so the safety committees, I'm going to recommend that the people who are checking this, so you just take out the pocket mask or the micro shield, because we're just not doing the breathing anymore, because the research has shown that it's challenging enough to do chest compressions, but it's even more challenging to do breathing, and the chest compressions have been demonstrated to be much more effective. So that's the FR2, and it's pretty straightforward. So any of these checks, it will just take a couple minutes at maximum. So the on-site defibrillator, and so I have cards on the side of this one. This is the one at the Wellness Center that I check off, and then I just initial it that everything's working. So I know that there needs to be some kind of documentation, so if you have some kind of paperwork in there and you'd rather have a card attached to the side, just let me know and I'll be happy to send you a few of these cards. So with the on-site defibrillator, we open that up, and what you'll notice right away differently, that it opens to the top, and then it has a cartridge in there, which is a little bit easier to use because the pads are in the cartridge, they're connected to the machine, and so they're ready to go just by pulling the little handle that says pull. And here becomes the issue, but even though this is in a sealed container, the gel that's on these pads can dry out over time, and so they need to be replaced properly. So on this one, it comes with the scissors on the top. It comes with a flap that you open up that has an extra set of cartridge in it, extra set of pads, and an extra battery. And this battery in the one for the Wellness Center, it expires in 2018, so we've got plenty of time. And also the pads expire in October of 2016, so we're good on that. So then I saw that the green light is blinking. I'm going to turn it on briefly to make sure it's working.
Begin by removing all clothing from the patient.
So that's all working properly. And so with this one, it has the battery on the back. And so you just compress the top of it, pull it out, and you can replace the battery if need be. This one is good again until April of 2018, so it's good. It snaps back in place very easy. The machine will come on for a self-test. So you just push the green button to turn it off. It has the cartridge in the front. There's a little lever on the top. You can see that here. I press that, the cartridge will pop out. And so then it makes a weird noise. So I'm going to replace a cartridge that's out of date, so when I do my demonstration, I can show you exactly how this works. So I'm putting this in, snapping it in, and I'll talk about adult pads, and then we push the green button again to turn it off. So that is the on-site defibrillator. And so again, it has a fast response kit involved with it. And so this one just has some gloves, an absorbent pad, and a razor, and it has also got another pair of scissors, so we have two pair of scissors and the ones down here if we need to. So that's the safety check. It needs to be done monthly. It's very easy to do, and you check it off, you just initial this, the date that you did that, and so that covers our liability for knowing that we've got a machine that's up to date and working properly. So again, we need to do these monthly, and somebody on the safety committee will need to do that, or somebody in the facility will need to check these things monthly just to make sure that everything's up to date. So if you have any questions about your defibrillator, you can always give me a call at extension 5610 or email me, and I can answer those questions. And so we're glad that we have these around the city. We have a list of all the defibrillators in the city. It's on Craig Sorseth's C-Share site, as well as my website on the splash page. It lists all the defibrillators around the city of Eugene. So we have I think we have almost every single building in the city covered with a defibrillator, and some sites have multiple defibrillators around the facility. So it never hurts to have these in our place, because you never know when a cardiac arrest may happen, and we want to be ready with doing chest compressions and grabbing a defibrillator and bringing it to the scene. So that's it on the safety check. It's very easy to do. It takes approximately 2 minutes, and then it's done. It just needs to be done, and I'm going to kind of reiterate this over and over again. It needs to be done on a month-to-month basis. And so that's it on the safety check. We'll take just a brief break here. I'll get Recessa Annie up, and I'll show you both defibrillators and how they work, and then just as a refresher for that. So we'll just be back in a second. And now I have Recessa Annie here, who's going to be my subject for putting on the two sets of pads. First from the FR2, which is just a little bit different than the Heart Start. And so I want to go over that real briefly. So if there's an emergency, and somebody hopefully has already called 911, and somebody, if it's a cardiac arrest, somebody's doing chest compressions on the person. So if I'm bringing the defibrillator up, I'm going to unzip it. I'm going to turn it on. It'll come on. And so it says apply pad, so I want to make sure I've got to get the clothing off the person. So luckily on Recessa Annie, we just unzip the jacket. And I've replaced the current set of pads with one that are out of date to show you how to do it. So the set of pads, you rip it open. You pull these out. There is a plug in, and it only goes in one way where there's a blinking yellow light, so that plugs in. I open the pads up, and I see one is up by the sternum or the clavicle, so I grab that. I apply that in the picture as it's shown, and then I take the other one off and apply that. And then once the pads are on and the defibrillator can read, I'm turning off the defibrillator now, so once the pads are on, then it will read the signal that if it's in a cardiac arrest situation where the ventricles are fibrillating, there's a unique electrical signal that the AEDs will read. And then if they can read that, and then if the person is shockable, the defibrillator will come on in a moment and say, charging, please stand back from patient, and then the orange button will light up and it will give you a command to push that button to provide the shock. So the thing is, you don't have to wait for the command. So if I know what I'm doing, if I tear the pads open, plug it in, get the pads on, the machine will catch up to wherever I'm at. So once the pads are on and it's analyzing, then I'm going to have my finger hovering over the orange button, and as soon as that button lights up, I'm going to press it. It'll provide the shock. As soon as that shock is given, the other person, if there's another person there with you, they're going to start chest compressions right away. So if this is going to work, it'll take probably 20 to 30 seconds before the person will come to, and the blood will start circulating again and giving oxygenated blood back to the brain. So we want to, as soon as the shock is given, be ready to start chest compressions right away. If the heart doesn't convert, then you'll give compressions for a minute. Then the machine will take over again and say, analyzing heart rhythm, please do not touch the patient. And so everybody will stand back and let the machine analyze again. And then if it can shock, it'll shock again. And then you're going to go right back into chest compressions. So because we have so many defibrillators around, that shouldn't be long before EMS would show up with all their really good equipment and their medications and all the things that they can really help the individual. So this is a stopgap in between the time that we call 911 and the time that EMS shows up. So if we've got people trained to use the defibrillator and to do chest compressions, then the person that went down has got a better chance of surviving without brain damage. So that's the FR2, very straightforward. You tear open the packet, you plug it in, you put the pads on, and the machine will take over from there. So I'm going to take these off. Just take just a brief second while I take these pads off, move the FR2, and we'll do the other one. Okay, we're back for the last demonstration of the heart start. And so as I said earlier, I replaced the cartridge so it has a cartridge that is out of date. And so with this one, if the same situation was happening, a person is down, we get there, we open up the defibrillator, and on the top is a little handle that says pull. I pull that, it pops off. The machine comes on, I pull the tab back, and then I've got my pads already here. So I look for the pads for the same thing. It's going to go by the clavicle.
Adhesive pads. Place pad exactly as shown in the picture. Press firmly.
So I have the pads on now, and so the machine would then catch up to where I'm at. I'm turning it off right now. So the machine would catch up to me, and then the same thing would go through analyzing the heart, see if it could shock it. If it can shock, it'll say charging, and then you're going to have your finger over the orange button. You're going to press it as soon as that orange button lights up, and then you'll have a person or myself would go back to do chest compressions on that individual. So that concludes our AED safety minute. And so I hope you've enjoyed this and be encouraged to whoever's going to be checking these monthly to do that, and to make sure that everybody in the city is safe, and to make sure that all of our equipment is up to date and ready to go. And we just want to be ready and have good equipment. So that does it from the Wellness Center, and I'll see you again. Bye.